Okay, so what I just wanted to look at here, I've had a query about calculating the break-even rate for EBIT. Now, EBIT is earnings before interest and tax. And what we want to do is we want to calculate the break-even of EBIT where a restructured capital pool will result in greater earnings per share. Okay, so we're looking at page 618 of the text, and there's an example there that talks about EBIT, it talks about a company, Capital Engineering Operators, that currently has 400,000 shares outstanding. So we've got 400,000 shares at $20 per share. Okay. Now, after the restructure, there is going to be $2 million worth of debt, and there's currently no debt. Okay. So currently price. Okay. Now there is currently no debt, but there will be $2 million worth of debt. I'll just do that. There will then be 300 shares because they're going to buy back shares, 100,000 shares at $20 each, and they'll buy back those shares at $20 each. Now, the question is, how much earnings before interest and tax will the company have to earn in order to have a higher earnings per share? Okay, because earnings per share, every share that someone owns, they're getting earnings per share represents the profit for them in the company. So we want to maximize the value of those shares. So earnings per share is one representation of maximizing the value of the shares. So this is what we can do. So let's look at the two equations for earnings per share. Earnings per share is equal to EBIT. I'm going to do it like this. EBIT, just expand this a bit, EBIT divided by 400,000, right? Now this is in the first scenario where we have 400,000 shares. Okay, so we're simply taking our earnings before interest and tax, dividing it by the number of shares, which gives us our earnings per share. Now, that's in the case where there's no debt. But let's consider this case where there is debt. Earnings per share is equal to EBIT minus 160,000 because, and this is what I should have added up here, this is the cost of debt. It's going to be an 8% annual interest payment on this debt, okay, as per the example. So all I'll say is 2 million times 0.08, 160,000. So that gives us our earnings per share in our second scenario after the debt restructure of EBIT minus 160,000 because our cost of debt, our interest payment is made regardless. And then, actually I'm going to do it like this. Then we divide that by what? 400,000, right? No, of course. We've bought back 100,000 shares. So we're going to divide that by 300,000. Now, how do we find the break-even point? Well, that's actually quite simple. All we do is we say, when is the earnings per share equal for before the restructure and after the restructure? So if we can put in here, earnings before so this is an algebraic method of solving multiple equations, and we'll actually combine them. So the first one we'll use on the left is EBIT before the restructure, EBIT divided by 400,000 equals EBIT minus 160,000 divided by 300,000. Now that equation, when we solve for that, we can determine the break-even point. Okay. So what I've done now is I've actually laid out all of the algebraic manipulation to get to the answer here of what the break-even EBIT is. And I'll just run you through that here. So we've combined those two equations into one because we know that both sides here equal earnings per share. I've then multiplied both sides by 400,000 in this equation here. That then reduces down to, by dividing that 400,000 by 300,000, it reduces down to this equation here, EBIT minus 160,000 times 1.33. I've then expanded those brackets, which leaves me with 1.333 EBIT minus 213,333. I've then subtracted 1.33 EBIT from both sides of the equation, which leaves me with minus 0.3333 EBIT equals minus 213,333. I've then divided both sides by minus 0.3333, and it gives me an EBIT of 640,000. So that's the fully step-by-step process. One way of, I think the manipulation in the textbook is slightly differently with some fractions, but there's a few ways to skin this cat, but ultimately this is the answer you can arrive at using algebra in a multiple equation situation to get your EBIT break even. So what we're saying here is if we then divide this 640,000, I'll just do this now, divided by 300,000, sorry, I should have done, equals 640,000 minus my interest cost divided by 300,000, it's $1.60. So $1.60 earnings per share. If the earnings per share are higher than $1.60, it will be a higher earnings per share for the restructured capital of this company. Thanks very much.